The first thing I did after being reborn before the apocalypse was spend $1 million to buy an 880-ton mining truck. Because once the radiation from the mechanical universe covers the globe, every vehicle under a person's name will become their exoskeleton mech. And the bigger, heavier, and tougher the vehicle is, the stronger the transformed mech will be. But in my previous life, I was so broke the only thing in my name was a shared bike I hadn't even returned. In the end, a passing mechanical beast crushed me like an ant. Now, there are only 7 days left before the apocalypse. I have to build an invincible steel behemoth of a mech within those 7 days. So I immediately pulled out my phone and started cashing out everything I could. At last, after a whole night of work, there was already a cold, hard $5 million sitting in my account. The next day, I went to a heavy machinery trading district. I spent $4 million to buy this 880-ton mining truck. After all, even the mechanical beast from my previous life weighed only 500 tons. But this shell alone was still nowhere near enough. I drove this steel beast to a black market mod shop to add a ram and weld on steel protective mesh. Then, turn the truck bed into a mobile armory. I wanted everyone to fear my mech. When my truck stopped at the entrance of the shop, everyone was startled. The mechanic, Lou DePau, looked at the steel beast and said, "Buddy, you took a wrong turn, didn't you? This is a repair shop, not an open pit mine. That thing of yours shook my foundation so hard it cracked." I pulled a blue blueprint out of my pocket and said, "I'm not here for maintenance, I'm here for modifications. Here is $500,000 for labor. Materials cost extra." At that, Lou DePau's breathing instantly grew heavy. Just then, a harsh roar of an engine rang out. Then, a red Porsche pulled up in front of everyone. The person who got out was the rich heir Zhang Xiao. In my previous life, his sports car mutated into an agility-type mech. He stole the only food I had. He even kicked me into a pile of machinery and left me there to fend for myself. Anytime he had nothing better to do, he'd mock me for being a loser who rode shared bikes. The moment he got out, Zhang Xiao spotted me standing off to the side. Well, if it isn't Lin Fan, don't tell me that junk by the door is yours. If it really is yours, move that heap of junk aside. Don't block my car from getting onto the lift. I ignored him. There was no need to argue with someone who'd be dead in a few days. To speed things up, I paid an extra $200,000 for overtime. A triangular ram was mounted on the front of the vehicle. The windows were sealed shut with steel mesh. Only a few viewing slits were left. The tires were reinforced with thick steel anti-blowout chain netting. The inside of the vehicle was turned into a safe room. It was split into a storage area and a sleeping area. At last, it was the early morning of the 3rd day. The basic build of my Fortress Tyrant was finally complete. But I knew it still needed one last piece to be complete. I drove the Fortress Tyrant straight to the biggest logistics warehouse in the city and loaded a full 300 tons of diesel into it. Then I bought countless supplies and packed them into the living area. After all that, I finally went to sleep, satisfied, and got a good night's rest. It wasn't until the final 24 hours before the apocalypse that everyone started to feel that something was wrong. The sky took on an eerie grayish-yellow color. A higher dimensional energy wave and a mechanical spark were approaching Earth. I slowly drove the Fortress Tyrant toward a dead-end road. The ground there was high, and the view was wide open. It was a good spot to attack or defend from. Most importantly, there were very few people around. The first wave of the apocalypse didn't come from mechanical beasts, but from the mutation of the vehicles around people. During rush hour traffic, thousands of vehicles mutated at the same time. The chaos that followed was the real hell. As a purple shockwave tore across the sky, the whole world let out a metallic roar. The black beast on the broken bridge also finished its mutation. System self-check complete. System self-check complete. S-Class mech vehicle, Fortress Tyrant, awaiting orders. Hearing that, a smile curled at the corner of my mouth. I slammed the gear lever down. The massive black vehicle roared to life. It charged toward that crossroads, a hell on earth. As I drove, I tried to link with it through my mind and control the Fortress Tyrant with my consciousness. Just then, a red dot appeared on the radar. A mutated bus. That double-decker bus had transformed into a steel centipede. It came hurtling down the slope straight at me. In the early stages of mutation, larger mechs would instinctively prey on other mechs. They evolved by devouring the other side's metal core. Not only did I not hit the brakes, I floored the gas and charged straight at it instead. When the bus centipede slammed into my front bumper, the force of the impact instantly sent it flying backward. Then I drove Fortress Tyrant forward and mercilessly crushed the bus's body. The next second, the system displayed. Level 1 mutant killed, bus type. Received 50 metal origin points. I muttered under my breath. Way too weak. I should go check on my old friend. Using my mind, I directed Fortress Tyrant toward downtown. There was an old friends gathering there. At the intersection stood a humanoid mech about 4 meters tall. It was Zhang Xiao, the one who'd been driving the supercar earlier. The defining trait of supercar-type mechs is that they can develop a complete humanoid form in the early days of the apocalypse. Zhang Xiao's arrogant voice boomed across the intersection through his mech speakers. This is power. At that moment, Zhang Xiao's vanity had swelled to its peak. Just then, a massive dark shape appeared in the distance. He stared at the enormous shadow in shock. That is that poor guy's car. No way, that huge hunk of metal can't possibly move. Jealousy and fear instantly drowned out his reason. Zhang Xiao controlled Scarlet Lightning and charged straight at me. In less than 2 seconds, he crossed 100 meters. The carbon fiber high-frequency vibrating blade in his hand was aimed straight at one of my tires. But when he brought the blade down, Zhang Xiao's blade shattered against the tire instead. The massive recoil instantly blew his arm apart. Seeing that, I drove Fortress Tyrant straight over Scarlet Lightning. The next second, that heap of red scrap metal was smashed straight into the ground. It turned into a thin red sheet of scrap. Right after that, the system displayed Level 1 mutant killed, supercar type. Received 1 rare speed module fragment. Just as I crushed Scarlet Lightning, 3 mechanical beasts dove down from the clouds overhead. The concrete ground suddenly cracked open as well. A burrowing type emerged from below. I reached out and pressed a red button on the console. With the hydraulic system roaring, the camouflage tarp at the rear of the vehicle was ripped away, revealing the twin-mounted 30mm autocannon turret underneath. I licked my lips, my eyes burning with a frenzied will to fight. Come on, all of you at once. Let me show you what it means that caliber is justice. When the twin-mounted 30mm autocannon S-motor started warming up and spinning, the air filled with the acrid smell of ionization. The 3 mechanical beasts in the sky had clearly underestimated the anti-air power of that black mass of steel on the ground. They pulled in their blade-like wings and dove down together in a pack. The acid sacs on their undersides opened, green corrosive fluid ready to spray out. I sat in the cockpit as 3 red crosshairs locked firmly onto the targets in the air. Then I lightly pulled the red trigger. 200-meter-long streams of fire instantly burst from the rear of the truck bed. The first mechanical beast in the lead didn't even have time to dodge before the shells hit it and blew it apart in the sky. Countless burning fragments fell like a rain of fire and landed on the abandoned vehicles around us with a sizzling hiss. Right after that, I pushed the control lever and kept aiming. The remaining mechanical beasts sensed the deadly danger and let out terrified shrieks. They tried to climb and escape, but the autocannon turned far faster than they could fly. The second mechanical beast was hit across the tail, and its entire lower half was blown away. Thrown off balance, it was like a kite with a snapped string, spinning as it crashed into the glass curtain wall of an office building. The third mechanical beast had just opened the acid sac on its belly to attack, when a barrage of shells set it off midair, along with the acid. I took a deep breath of the sharp gunpowder smoke. Is there no stronger enemy that can let me taste even a hint of defeat? As soon as I finished speaking, a loud blast suddenly came from beneath my vehicle. The 880-ton vehicle swayed slightly. The asphalt on the ground bulged like waves, as a mutated heavy excavator burst out of the ground from the side. Its giant steel jaws lunged at the fortress's left rear wheel. Its sharp teeth jammed into the gaps in the track armor, keeping me from moving forward even an inch. But the excavator had overlooked the difference in weight. Even as it frantically pulled back its hydraulic arm to pry the fortress loose, the Fortress Tyrant didn't budge an inch. Sitting inside the vehicle, I sneered as I worked the controls. Let me show you what real industrial-grade crushing looks like. Then the reverse engine roared at full power. The Fortress Tyrant's massive wheels began turning backward. The excavator clamped onto the tire was forced down into the ground. In just 5 seconds, it was crushed and pressed into the earth. Right after that, the system notification sounded. Killed a level 1 mutant, bus type. Obtained 50 metal origin points. I sat in the vehicle and shook my head. Still too boring. The only thing in this world that can shake me is something even heavier. But there isn't anything like that yet. It is hard for me to know defeat. The battle was over. The intersection fell deathly silent. The low-level mutant vehicles that had been darting all over the streets just moments ago were now all crouched on the ground, trembling. I didn't go after those small fry. Instead, I looked toward the wreckage of the mechanical beasts I destroyed. In the apocalypse, killing isn't the goal. Resources are the real prize. I pressed the button. Flexible mechanical tentacles extended from both sides of Fortress Tyrant. These were maintenance arms I added at the mod shop on a whim. Now they had become the perfect scavenging tools. A mechanical arm precisely stabbed into the excavator's scrap metal and pulled out a blue glowing core crystal. Next was the speed module core from the flattened Ferrari. I had Fortress Tyrant devour those cores. Soon, a warm current spread through the vehicle. Absorption, successful. Armor strength increased by 0.5%. Obtained skill fragment, instant acceleration. 10 fragments are needed to unlock it. Then, the rumbling started up again. The black beast rolled over the wreckage scattered across the ground and headed for the logistics park on the edge of the city. Soon, a strange scene appeared on the highway leading to the logistics park. At the very front was a massive black mining truck that seemed to blot out the sky. It ruthlessly slammed aside the wrecked vehicles blocking the road, and the wandering low-level vehicles as well, forcibly carving a wide road through the ruins. And about 200 meters behind me, a small convoy was following cautiously. 3 private cars and a small panel van. I'd already picked up the convoy behind me on radar, but I didn't chase them away. In the early days of the apocalypse, people who can quickly read the situation and choose to ride someone else's coattails like this usually live a little longer, and with a few cannon fodder behind me, they could also serve as an alarm. However, when the convoy reached the bridge, they found the bridgehead was already blocked off. More than a dozen modified pickups and SUVs were parked across the road. Their vehicles formed a crude barricade. Several men stood on the roofs, holding shotguns and fire axes. Every one of them looked vicious. Just a few hours after the apocalypse began, the evil in human nature was already starting to surface. They had taken over a key stretch of the road, just to rob people fleeing for their lives. All vehicles, stop right there. The bald leader stood on top of a Range Rover, waving a red signal baton. In their eyes, any car trying to leave the city had to pay a toll. The cars behind me were obviously terrified. Some even tried to turn around. Seeing that, I didn't slow down. Instead, I shifted into a higher gear and charged straight through. The massive black truck cast a huge shadow in the sunlight, quickly covering the whole barricade area. The bald man's cocky expression instantly froze. As the distance closed, he finally saw what was charging at him. The bald man let out a panicked, high-pitched scream. He threw down the flag and tried to dive into the Range Rover, but his men were half a beat too slow. One of them even instinctively raised a shotgun and fired at the steel fortress's tire. But it was completely useless. I drove the Fortress Tyrant's massive ram straight into the barricade made of pickups and SUVs. Before the bald man could get into the car, the massive impact sent him flying. He slammed into the guardrail and passed out. In just 3 seconds, the barricade was gone. All around were the wrecks of smashed-up cars. I didn't even spare them a glance. I drove the Fortress Tyrant straight onto the bridge. Before leaving, I also grabbed the cores from those vehicles. Soon, I drove the Fortress Tyrant to the plaza of a service area and got ready to park and sort through the cores, while also taking care of the people trailing me. As my vehicle came to a stop, the cars following behind hurriedly stopped about 30 meters away. The doors opened, and several people got out, trembling. A middle-aged man in a suit held up a pack of cigarettes. A young couple leaned on each other for support, and a young woman in work clothes tightly gripped a wrench. They exchanged glances, then worked up the courage to walk toward the mining truck towering there like a temple. I pushed open the cab door and looked down at them from above. I idly toyed with a modified nail gun in my hand and said coldly, "You've been following me the whole way. Pay up for the gas." Of course, that was a joke. But in that kind of situation, it sounded like a royal decree. The middle-aged man hurried over, his voice shaking as he shouted, "Sir, thank you. Thank you for clearing the way just now. We mean no harm. We have water and food in the car. You can have it all. We just ask that you let us keep following you." Hearing that, a mocking smile curled at my lips. "Follow me. Can you even keep up?" The young girl suddenly shouted, "We'll keep up even if it kills us. I know where you're going. You're going to build a camp, right? I'm a mechanical engineering student. I can fix cars. I can be useful." The girl from the young couple quickly raised her hand too. "I can cook." The sturdy middle-aged man also pulled out his ID. "I'm a surgeon. There may not be any medicine right now, but I can treat injuries. A mechanic, a doctor, and someone for logistics." I raised an eyebrow. That was actually a pretty solid lineup for the early days of the apocalypse. Even though I have an invincible fortress in this life, people still need rest. Some chores really do need extra hands. So I was silent for a moment, then said coldly, "I don't keep freeloaders. If you want to follow me, don't fall behind." To everyone there, my words sounded like music from heaven. The people below were so excited they nearly cried. With monsters everywhere and human life treated like nothing, Being able to follow someone this strong on the first day of the apocalypse was practically a blessing from God. Inside the cab, I quietly thought things over. Zhang Xiao is dead, the road thugs are gone, and I've taken in some followers. A perfect end to day one. Next, it is time to get that thing. I pulled a crumpled map from my jacket and tapped a spot marked with a red circle. It was an air raid shelter beneath the city. The legendary military supply depot. It had the reactor component I needed for my next stage of evolution. Entrance to the air raid shelter in the western suburbs of Linhai City. This place used to be a military zone disguised as an abandoned factory. The heavy wire fence had long since rusted, hiding a wartime supply depot deep underground. The black mining behemoth came to a stop in front of a concrete blast door nearly 10 meters tall. The door was half a meter thick. It had originally needed a complex electronic key and iris scan to open, but during the MP after the apocalypse began, the electronic lock had long since burned out. The door had become a dead end. The convoy behind us came to a stop. The mechanical engineering girl named Susu jumped out of the vehicle with a toolbox in her hand and jogged over to the mining truck's huge tire. She tilted her head up at the dark cab and shouted, "Boss, this door runs on hydraulics. The electronic lock is broken, but I can try to short the backup power or find the manual pressure relief valve." The cab window lowered a crack, and then a cold voice came from inside. "Too slow. In the apocalypse, time is life. In the face of absolute mass, nothing can't be smashed through." I looked at the massive concrete door. The radar showed that behind it was the main tunnel fortress, stretching for 3 kilometers. Ramming mode adjusted. The mining truck let out a low roar and backed up 50 meters before accelerating. With a weight of 880 tons, plus more than 3,000 horsepower of thrust, the moment it hit the door, its kinetic energy was unleashed to the fullest. That blast door, supposedly able to withstand a nuclear shockwave, under a single-point breakthrough by pure physical force, let out a harsh crack as the concrete shattered. Then the entire door was rammed inward, before collapsing with a thunderous crash. As for my fortress, it only lost a little paint on the ram. Then I stepped on the gas. The black vehicle rolled over the wreckage of the door and drove into the dark underground tunnel. The survivors behind us were dumbfounded, but they still followed behind us anyway. The tunnel was pitch black inside. Only the 4 searchlights on top of the mining truck pierced the darkness like 4 swords of light. The air here was murky, with a stale smell of motor oil and mold. Suddenly, a dense cluster of red dots appeared on the radar. As a military restricted zone, this place had once been equipped with a large number of automated defense systems. Under the radiation from the mechanical spark, even these once lifeless machines had mutated. At the top of the tunnel ahead, several upside-down automated sentry guns suddenly swung their barrels around. Their infrared sensors locked firmly onto the intruders. Then, a dense spray of gunfire burst out instantly. Bullets rained against the armor, plating on the front of the minecart. If it had been an ordinary vehicle, it would have been riddled with holes by now. But against the fortress's marine steel plates, dozens of millimeters thick, the bullets could only leave faint white marks. I didn't even flinch. I didn't T-use the precious 30mm autocannon. Instead, I turned on the roof-mounted secondary weapon system. It was a twin-barreled high-pressure water cannon I had installed on the side at the mod shop. It was originally meant for washing ore, except now, the tank wasn't filled with water, but with used engine oil I had swiped from the gas station. 2 black streams of oil sprayed at the sentry guns. Right after that, I fired a flare at them. The flames instantly swallowed the entire ceiling. Those mutated sentry guns may have developed simple awareness, but they were still fixed targets. Under the blazing fire, a string of explosions echoed through the tunnel. The convoy behind us carefully drove around the still burning wreckage. Susu looked at those precision weapon parts, and it pained her to see them. Such good stuff. Those servo motors are still usable. Just then, my voice came over the loudspeaker. "If you want them, I'll give you 5 minutes to clean up the battlefield. Take anything that is still usable. We'll need it for repairs later." That made Susu's eyes light up. She immediately jumped out of the vehicle and took several people with her to start frantically stripping parts. That was one of the reasons I brought them along. I needed a professional logistics team to turn all the spoils into combat power. Soon, after passing through the long tunnel, we finally reached the main storage area at the deepest level. The space suddenly opened up. It was as big as a soccer field. Row after row of huge shelves were stacked with dark green wooden crates. Guns, ammunition, military rations, body armor. This was practically a treasure vault in the apocalypse. All the survivors went crazy. Even the doctor who had always stayed calm. At that moment, he was also clutching a box of emergency medical supplies, his hands trembling. But I wasn't interested in any of that. My eyes locked onto the center of the storage area, where an isolated chamber wrapped in thick lead plating stood. A bright red radiation warning sign was posted there. Inside that chamber was the base's backup power source, a core set of micro-fission batteries. This was black tech designed so that even after nuclear war broke out, the base could still keep running for 50 years. It was also the key to the Fortress Tyrant's evolution. As the massive valve began to turn, the door, sealed for decades, slowly opened. A ghostly blue light shone through the crack. In the center of the chamber stood a transparent cylindrical container. Suspended inside were 3 metal rods, glowing with a faint blue light. These were micro-fission fuel rods. Even through the protective suit, I could still feel that heart-pounding energy fluctuation. In the apocalypse, energy is divided into 3 levels. Level 1 is fossil fuel energy, gasoline, and diesel. It is inefficient, noisy, and non-renewable. Level 2 is electrochemical energy, lithium batteries, and hydrogen fuel. It is quiet, but its range is limited. Level 3 is nuclear energy and higher dimensional energy, with effectively unlimited endurance, and it can power energy shields and beam weapons. The fortress was still stuck at level 1, and these 3 rods were the key to reaching level 3. I didn't hesitate for a second. Back in the vehicle, I operated the mechanical arm on its side, and carefully picked up the 3 fuel rods. Then, the massive intake grill at the front of the truck slowly opened, revealing the bottomless devouring slot inside. As the mechanical arm fed the fuel rods into it, the entire underground space seemed to freeze in an instant. Immediately after, a terrifying suction force erupted from inside the mining truck. Every gauge on the dashboard instantly maxed out. The cabin's original orange-yellow lighting instantly turned into a blinding ghostly blue. System warning. Detected energy density in the high-energy reactor component exceeds safe limits. Forced assimilation in progress. The vehicle began to shake violently. The engine's roar changed. From the rough explosions of a diesel engine to a shriek like a turbojet engine, I let out a pained scream inside the cab. As the host, I was also enduring a massive energy impact. It felt as if magma were flowing through my veins, and blue light was blasting from my eyes. Assimilation complete, energy system upgraded. Hybrid micro-nuclear fission drive unlocked. New skill unlocked. Deflection field shield unlocked. New skill overload RAM. At that moment, the mining truck didn't look much different, but there was now a faint blue glow over its surface. Just as I finished evolving, terrified screams suddenly came from the hall outside. "Help, boss, help!" It was the doctor's voice. I snapped my eyes open and saw that the hall outside had turned into a living hell. The tunnel entrance we came in through was already blocked. Countless mechanical rats, each only the size of a house cat, like a tidal wave, poured out of the ventilation ducts and even the cracks in the walls. And in the middle of the rat swarm stood a gigantic monster. It was a mutated garbage truck. Its cargo bed had turned into a massive breeding nest, spitting out new mechanical rats non-stop. The front of the truck was covered with countless compound eyes, giving off foul green toxic gas. At that moment, Susu, the doctor, and the others were backed into a corner. The rifles they had just picked up were nowhere near enough to hold back the overwhelming rat swarm. Several mechanical rats had already leaped onto Susu. Their razor-sharp gears were about to slice open her throat. "You're asking to die," my voice turned ice cold. "Perfect. I'll use you to test my new equipment. Fortress, activate the deflection field." A semi-transparent blue light screen instantly burst outward from the mining truck in all directions. As the light screen swept past, the mechanical rats were like flies hitting an electric swatter. Their internal circuit boards were burned out on the spot, and blue smoke rose from their bodies. They crackled as they fell to the ground and turned into piles of scrap metal. A huge section of the menacing rat nest was instantly wiped out. The rats on Susu also stiffened and dropped off her. After narrowly surviving, she collapsed to the floor. She stared blankly at the giant truck radiating a holy blue light. I paid no attention to everyone's shock and locked onto the Rat King. The Rat King was clearly enraged. It let out a piercing roar. Its cargo bed suddenly opened wide and sprayed out a stream of green corrosive venom, shooting straight toward the mining truck. I neither dodged nor flinched. I charged straight into the toxic spray. The venom splashed across the blue energy shield, hissing as it hit, then instantly vaporized. It didn't even touch the paint. This is what a level 3 power source does to a level 1 opponent. Then I channeled the newly acquired nuclear energy into the propulsion system. The 880-ton beast seemed to break free from gravity itself. Its speed shot up to 100 kilometers in just 2 seconds. A blue meteor streaked across the hall. The mining truck's ram, wrapped in a blue energy storm, slammed hard into the Rat King's chest. That garbage truck's seemingly heavy armor, in the face of a nuclear-powered impact, was like styrofoam. The entire vehicle was ripped through and torn apart in an instant. Before the Rat King could even scream, it was drowned out by the massive explosion. Its core was shattered on impact. Trash and parts flew everywhere. System notification. Level 3 mutant killed, scavenger type. Biodegradation module acquired. The hall fell silent, driving the fortress that now seemed almost godlike. I slowly came to a stop in front of Susu and the others. The blue glow gradually faded, and it turned back into that cold black mining truck. The window rolled down. I looked at the group, now completely stunned, and said flatly, "Pack up the supplies. Don't waste time. Next stop, we're going hunting for something big." When that black beast, tempered by nuclear energy, drove out of the air raid shelter again, the outside world was already at dusk. The blood-red setting sun spilled over the ruins, casting an ominous golden glow over the entire city of Linhai. Susu, following behind, swallowed hard. She stared at the mining truck ahead in fascination. Its once matte body now shimmered with a ghostly blue glow through the seams. The engine sounded different now. It was no longer the rough clatter of diesel combustion, but something more like a jet engine, a high, refined turbine whine. That sound sent a tingling sense of pressure up your spine. I stopped the truck and turned on the rear spotlight. All the survivors slammed on their brakes at once. They all jumped out nervously, one after another, waiting for my instructions. I pushed open the heavy armored door and jumped down. My movements felt much lighter now. Clearly, the mech's evolution had also strengthened its host. I glanced over this shabby convoy. One box truck loaded with munitions, and 3 private cars packed with food and water. If they ran into a zombie horde, they wouldn't last even a minute. So I pointed at the massive tow hook on the back of the mining truck. It was a heavy-duty hook used to tow ore trailers. Susu, there are several steel cables in the truck bed for securing tanks. Hook all your vehicles together and attach them behind my truck. Susu froze when she heard that. What if we hit a sharp turn? I cut her off coldly. My truck is 10 meters wide. Anywhere I drive becomes open ground. There won't be any turns. It was an extremely overbearing tactic, using the 880-ton nuclear-powered mining truck as the lead vehicle, with all the smaller cars being dragged behind it. That way, the smaller cars wouldn't have to smash through roadblocks on their own. Even if their engines stalled, the mining truck could still drag them along by sheer force, and it would also create a tight defensive formation. 10 minutes later, a strange convoy had taken shape. Like a long steel serpent, it headed toward the Linhai City Ring Expressway. This used to be a major traffic artery, but now tens of thousands of abandoned vehicles clogged the road. There was no end in sight. An ordinary person would have despaired at the sight, but I simply switched into low-speed cruise mode. The massive ram on the front was like a red-hot knife, mercilessly shoving aside the cars blocking the way, the survivors being towed behind. Watched the wreckage on both sides race past outside their windows, their hearts filled with shock. They didn't have to do anything, as long as they followed that godlike figure up front. He would carve out a path to survival for them. So this is what it feels like to have someone powerful carrying you. The doctor wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and hugged the first aid kit in his arms even tighter. But what he didn't know was that all this commotion was drawing hunters down from above the clouds. I sat in the driver's seat. On the holographic radar in front of me, a dense mass of red dots suddenly appeared. They weren't on the ground, they were diving down from the sky. In the apocalypse, if you make too much noise on the ground, you'll attract the scavengers of the sky. Through the panoramic sunroof, I saw a mass of black clouds rushing toward us. It was a swarm of mutated gargoyle drones. They were monsters created by the fusion of civilian camera drones and mutated birds of prey. Their propellers had turned into sharp, bony rotors. Their cameras had become red compound eyes. Microbombs or sharp grappling hooks hung beneath their bodies. There were at least 500 of them. Their piercing buzz drowned out the engine's roar. The next second, the black cloud was right overhead. Countless microbombs rained down like hail. Though each one wasn't very powerful, their sheer numbers were enough to flip an ordinary vehicle. A private car behind us had its windshield shattered instantly. The driver let out a scream. Whether he lived or died was unknown. My fingers flew across the control panel. Nuclear shield, full power coverage. At once, that familiar blue barrier rose again. But this time, with the reactor now operational, the shield's range had expanded. A massive hemispherical dome, covered the smaller convoy behind us as well. The bombs struck the energy shield and burst into waves of blue ripples, but they couldn't damage it in the slightest. Now it is my turn. I let out a cold laugh. Auto defense system, lock on to targets. All airborne units, fire at will. The camouflage tarp at the rear of the truck bed slid away again. The twin-mounted 30mm autocannon turret raised its head. The diving drone, Swarm, slammed into what seemed like a wall of fire. Countless burning fragments rained down onto the blue shield. Susu in the convoy quietly lifted her head. She took one look and was instantly stunned by the scene before her. That black mining truck was like a towering fortress, standing firm at the center of destruction, unleashing its firepower at the heavens and the earth. Susu's fingers gripped the window frame tightly. As a mechanic, what she saw was more than just slaughter. It was the ultimate beauty of energy in motion. After failing to break through for so long, the drone swarm finally spread out. Deep in the clouds, a massive shadow slowly descended. It was a Lord-class Ironwing Griffin. It was a monster formed by fusing an armed helicopter with an eagle. Its wingspan was over 20 meters, and its rotors had turned into enormous wings. Real aircraft cannons and rocket launchers were mounted beneath its nose. It landed on the gantry above the elevated highway ahead. Its huge claws dug deep into the concrete crossbeam. Those red glowing electronic eyes were locked onto my mining truck. Without a word, the Griffin Lord fired 2 rockets straight at us. They slammed into the shield. The blue barrier shook violently. Alarms instantly blared. Interesting. Finally, something that can break through my defenses. I didn't panic at all. I jerked the steering wheel hard, using the downhill momentum to speed straight toward the gantry. The Griffin Lord was just about to fire a second volley of rockets when I pressed that red button. A high-pressure stream of fuel mixed with nuclear radiation, like a blue fire dragon, sprayed directly onto the Griffin Lord. Right after that, an incendiary round finished it off. The Griffin Lord instantly turned into a massive fireball. The already flammable aviation fuel ignited, and with the intense heat of nuclear energy, its metal feathers began to melt. Its massive body lost its balance, and, like a meteor, crashed hard onto the highway. It landed right in front of the mining truck. I showed no mercy. I drove the Fortress Tyrant straight over its body. Even the armor of an armed helicopter was flattened under hundreds of tons of pressure. The battle was over. The skies within a 5-kilometer radius were cleared out. Not a single bird dared fly over this area again. Finally, at midnight, we arrived at our destination, Linhai International Convention and Exhibition Center. The land here is wide open. There are sturdy walls all around it, and the main building is a huge steel exhibition hall. It is perfect for turning into a fortress. Most importantly, the underground parking garage here is enormous. It is big enough to fit this massive mining truck. I parked the truck in the middle of the convention center plaza. The smaller vehicles behind me also came to a stop. Everyone opened their doors and climbed out on shaky legs. They looked at the mining truck, still completely unharmed, and in their eyes, besides awe, nothing else remained. I jumped down from the truck with a can of beer in my hand. We're camping here tonight. Susu, take some people and check the backup generators. If any of them are broken, fix them. Doctor, go gather the medical supplies inside the hall. Everyone else, form the vehicles into a circle and set up a perimeter. After everyone got to work, I climbed up onto the top of the mining truck alone. I sat beside the massive cannon turret, popped open the beer tab, and tilted my head back for a swig of ice-cold beer. In the distance, flames shot into the sky, and faint screams could be heard. And beneath my feet was an invincible fortress and a group of utterly loyal followers. Next, it was time to let this city know who its new master was. Before long, 3 days had passed. I hadn't been idle during those 3 days. Susu led several survivors who knew machinery and used the forklifts and steel beams inside the hall to carry out maintenance on the Fortress Tyrant. Meanwhile, the doctors set up a decent field hospital, a proper field hospital. The whole team went from being jumpy and on edge to becoming a finely tuned machine. But that calm was shattered on the morning of the 4th day. The small stones on the ground began to bounce in a steady rhythm. Ripples spread across the water in the cup. I snapped my eyes open and immediately caught the roar of a large group of diesel engines in the distance. A huge cloud of yellow dust rose at the horizon. A massive, suffocating convoy was closing in on the convention center. They weren't zombie vehicles, but war machines modified by human hands. It was a fleet made up entirely of heavy-duty pickups and modified off-road vehicles. There were even a few cash transport trucks welded over with steel plates. They were painted with blood-red skull emblems. Every vehicle had either a heavy machine gun or a homemade rocket launcher mounted on top. And at the very center of the convoy, surrounded by the others, was a massive beast. It was a land cruiser. It had been converted from an extra-long, heavy flatbed trailer. It not only had a 3-story command tower built on it, it was also fitted with a huge crane arm. I recognized them. That was the Bloodskull Legion from my previous life. They were the biggest raider force in Linhai City. It was said their leader, Butcher, specialized in hunting mutated vehicles, taking their cores and stealing their fuel. Soon, Susu's voice came trembling over the radio. "Boss, they've blocked the main gate." Then, from that land cruiser, a huge loudspeaker let out a harsh, piercing sound. "Listen up, everyone inside. I'm the deputy commander of the Bloodskull Legion. Hand over that vehicle and the energy core inside it. I can spare your lives." These dozens of armed vehicles from the Bloodskull Legion were enough to overrun any small shelter. The convention center fell completely silent. Everyone's eyes turned toward the center of the plaza, to that sunken black beast of a vehicle. Sitting in the cab, I smiled. The energy core, that was my heart. You want my life. Then I'll have to take yours. So I pressed the loudspeaker button. My voice was low, but the massive speaker array carried it across the entire battlefield. Get lost or die. The raiders outside froze for a moment, then burst into laughter. You refused the easy way, so don't blame us for the hard way. Boys, blow this place flat. At that command, dozens of rockets streaked forward trailing flames and slammed into the convention center's glass curtain wall like a rain of fire. I didn't hide behind cover. The massive black mining truck smashed straight through the exhibition hall's front glass doors and charged into the plaza like a tiger unleashed from its cage. The blue shield flashed with dazzling light under the sun as a barrage of bullets and rockets slammed into it. They only sent ripples spreading outward. They couldn't damage the truck at all. The raiders were stunned. They'd seen heavily armored vehicles before, but never one with its own energy shield. This time, it wasn't just the 30mm autocannon. On both sides of the mining truck, 2 rows of tightly packed launch ports suddenly popped out. They were man-portable thermobaric bombs I had grabbed from the armory along the way. Susu had modified them into a vehicle-mounted multiple launcher. 24 thermobaric bombs roared out. Those dozen or so vehicles instantly turned into scrap metal. The raiders inside couldn't even let out a scream before the pressure wave shattered their lungs. The destruction of the Vanguard didn't scare off the Bloodskull Legion. If anything, it only made them more savage. That is nuclear power. It is a nuclear-powered vehicle. If we take it, we'll rule the world. That massive land cruiser finally moved. It was like a derailed train, roaring as it charged into the plaza. Its weapon wasn't a cannon, but that enormous crane arm. Hanging from it was a 10-ton electromagnetic suction pad. It was specially designed to capture mutated vehicles. A powerful electromagnetic wave instantly enveloped my mining truck. If it had been an ordinary mutated vehicle, its electronic systems would have been disabled by now. But the Fortress Tyrant had a nuclear energy shield. The electromagnetic waves were completely blocked. I looked at the massive crane arm reaching toward me, with a hint of disdain in my eyes. I slammed it into low-range 4-wheel drive and pushed forward instead of backing off. I rammed straight into the land cruiser, which was twice as long as mine. With an earth-shattering crash, the 2 massive vehicles slammed into each other. The ground shook violently, and the concrete plaza instantly cracked apart. The front end of the land cruiser crumpled inward the instant it made contact, but with its extra-long body and the traction of its 20 wheels, it actually managed to withstand the mining truck's impact. On the cruiser's command tower, the Butcher, his face thick with flesh, roared like a madman. Latch onto it. The massive electromagnetic suction pad slammed hard against the mining truck's shield, trying to crush it with sheer physical force, even though the red warning lights were flashing inside the cab. But I stayed frighteningly calm. I said something baffling into the radio. "Susu, blow that one up." It turned out that in the collision just now, a self-destruct robot, piloted by Susu, had already quietly slipped under the land cruiser's chassis. Right below it was the main fuel tank. The moment Susu pressed the detonator, a violent explosion suddenly tore through the cruiser's undercarriage. It wasn't enough to destroy the whole vehicle, but it blew apart the main drive shaft, and it ignited the fuel tank. The fire instantly got out of control. I seized that brief moment of stiffness. The energy field that had been sustaining the shield was compressed in reverse in an instant, then unleashed through the micro-ram. A blue shockwave, visible to the naked eye, shot straight through the land cruiser's body. That arrogant land cruiser started breaking apart from the middle. Its massive keel snapped. Its command tower came crashing down. Amid Butcher's desperate screams, I drove the mining truck forward and crushed it again. The massive engineering tires climbed onto the cruiser's wreckage and ground this mobile fortress, and all the ambition inside it completely underfoot. The remaining raiders instantly fell apart. They threw down their weapons and armor and drove off in all directions in their remaining wrecks. I stopped on top of the burning wreckage and looked down over the battlefield. Susu and the doctor led people rushing out of the shelters. They gathered around the mining truck, cheering. They looked at the black beast towering over the ruins, and at the man sitting in the cab, like a god. At that moment, they were no longer just survivors. They were also subjects of this new king. The day after the battle ended, the convention center looked completely different. I didn't let anyone rest. Instead, I began a frantic round of construction. That destroyed land cruiser was wrecked, but it left behind a huge amount of steel plating, weapons, and supplies. Susu directed the workers to strip off those steel plates and weld them onto the convention center's walls, creating a true wall of steel. The doctors sorted through the medicine left behind by the raiders and set up a field hospital capable of performing surgery. As for me, I made a startling decision. I parked Fortress Tyrant in the main hall of the exhibition center. Then I connected a set of thick power cables. Switching modes, core power supply mode. The micronuclear reactor inside the mining truck began powering the entire base. The lights came on. The air conditioning started up. The water purification system started working. Even the giant screen at the top of the exhibition hall lit up. In this pitch-black, deathly silent post-apocalyptic wasteland, the exhibition center had become a city that never slept. It was no longer just a temporary shelter. It was Tyrant City. A month later, Tyrant City had doubled in size. Survivors from the surrounding area came flocking in, seeking shelter. At that moment, I was standing on the roof of the exhibition center. Beside me was Fortress Tyrant, upgraded once again. It had now been fitted with an electromagnetic crane arm taken from a land cruiser. It even had limited transformation abilities. It could transform into a fixed gun turret bunker. Just then, Susu walked over holding a tablet. Her expression was grim. Boss, the radar picked up abnormal energy fluctuations near the coast. The energy reading is 10 times ours. I took the tablet, and on the screen, a massive red shadow was slowly rising from the sea. It was an aircraft carrier, a mutated aircraft carrier with limbs and tentacles all over its back. Mechanical beast, S-Class Leviathan. I stared at that red blip. There was no fear in my eyes, only an even fiercer will to fight. I patted the mining truck beside me. Zhuangjie, looks like this still isn't the end. Our journey has only just begun.